hypothesized and wrote about raping and murdering women.
No.
Some such lyrics went, quote, and this isn't like about the raping part, but this just shows how much he hated women. Just beneath their blushing lashes and their innocent smiles lies the most rancid and putrid, sickening essences.
Okay, lashes don't blush. 1, let's get to
Yeah, you
facts
piece of
here,
shit.
you dumbass. 2, that's really mean and hurtful.
Yeah. Scott Paul had been fired for multiple jobs. And I mean, like almost every job he'd been at for his treatment of women. He was sent to the principal growing up because of the way he treated other women, and he was kicked out of the army.
Well, you know, I'm glad that people were actually like, you can't do this, Scott. Like, it wasn't like he got away with it. Well, at least in these specific circumstances. I am glad that people were like, yeah, you're fired. Yeah. Like, you can't do this.
Yeah. And I'll talk more about that. I'm going to talk about the evening. So on that November evening at the yoga studio, oh my God, I could feel that coming up from my belly.
I could just sense it. I don't know.
So on that November evening at the yoga studio, Kate Pearson, the one at the front, said that Scott Paul seemed very, and this is, her perspective, but she said he seemed very unsure of himself, very anxious. As students began to arrive for the class, he paced outside on the breezeway. So when you see a picture of, it's one of those, it's like a 2-story, basically think of a strip mall, but then a second story on top. So like you walk upstairs and then go down.
It's like an outdoor patio wraparound. Yeah. I've been to places like that.
Yeah. So he was outside on that like balcony pacing back and forth as students started to arrive. He went inside once, and this part's insane. He asked Kate when the busier classes were held. Kate told him that Saturday mornings were pretty busy, and then he walked outside again. So she thought he was going to skip class. Like he was was very interested in coming back when there was a busier
lot of
time.
people.
When 5:30 came, class, so the instructor was there, all the the 11 students. Kate is in the front, and there's 12 people in the back room. Class started, and he still hadn't come back inside. Then he walks in when class has already started and everyone is in child's pose. He was still in his shoes, still holding the shrink-wrapped yoga mat, his bag still across his chest. The teacher saw him walk in and said, you can store your stuff in the cubbies outside and then come back in. Everyone's in child's pose. He said, but I have a question, as he stumbled to open his bag, and then he pulled out a gun.
He just got right into it, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
For a moment, he just stood still. Then he pointed the gun at the woman closest to him. Kate, who was still out front, heard 3 loud noises, which I first thought were gunshots, but I'm not sure what they were. She heard 3 loud noises behind the wall. She thought maybe the stereo had fallen off the shelf or something. Then she heard the instructor yell, "What are you doing?" followed by 5 gunshots, like one right after the other.
Oh my gosh.
Kate ran out of the studio and then heard a student running behind her screaming, "I think I've been shot." Inside the studio, obviously, was complete chaos. Scott Paul had shot fast and wild, like not really seeming to target any one student, but all of them. The entire room was a target.
Which was why he wanted a class that was full. Yeah.
One woman was shot in her torso, left arm, and leg. Another shot in the chest. A third woman was shot in the back as she ran out the door.
So these people survived.
Yeah. So the 2 victims I talked about in the beginning. Yeah, the 2 women closest to Scott fell almost immediately. And it didn't say who, but that's, maybe not for us to know. One was shot in the head. The other was shot twice in the back. And these 2 women were Maura Binkley and Nancy Van Vessem, neither of whom would survive.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of wounded people, but 2 murder victims. After 13 shots, Scott just stopped. And he was trying to use the gun. So there was actually one male in the class, a man named Joshua Quick. He was the only male student. He heard the gun click and he saw Scott fumbling. And so Joshua wasn't sure if it was empty or just jammed, but he knew he had to move. He knew he had to do something. So he actually grabbed the nearest item he could find, which was a vacuum cleaner in the corner.
Awesome.
He picked up the vacuum cleaner and ran towards Scott. He slammed the vacuum towards Scott's head, but Scott didn't fall. Instead, he swung his gun at Joshua and pistol whipped him, smashing his face open.
Oh, no. Kudos to Joshua, though.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Joshua's
so brave.
a fucking hero. And I'll keep going with as this chaos went on, but I imagine more people would have died if Scott hadn't done what he did. So Joshua then grabbed a nearby broom and ran at Scott again. He wasn't done. I read an interview with him, and he was like, I knew when I ran at him, the first and second time, he was probably going to shoot me. But Joshua's girlfriend was also there. And Joshua was just thinking, I just have to save, he's going to shoot me, but he's going to shoot all of us if I don't do something. Like, he's a fucking hero.
Wow.
So Joshua grabbed a broom and ran at Scott again. And he doesn't remember this. He didn't remember being hit, but he was struck in the face by Scott's elbow, according to Joshua's girlfriend who was in the class. When Joshua kind of came, like, he didn't get knocked out, but when he kind of like came to.
Well, it takes you, like, you get the wind knocked out, you kind of thing. Like, it takes you a second. Yeah.
So when he like came to, it was only him, his girlfriend, and Scott in the studio. Everyone else had fled. Except the wounded but they were hiding. Like, they were only visible. So there were people still in the room, but they were like hiding behind or under things. Joshua and his girlfriend then ran out, leaving Scott alone in the room other than the people who were hiding. The women who were hiding said they heard Scott mumble something to himself, but they couldn't hear what it was. And then he shot himself in the face. Oh, okay. So I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here.
Yeah.
So a few months before Scott Paul walked into the yoga studio, so this is a big thing in this case, is whether it's a hate crime or not, which it absolutely fucking is.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So a few months before, the Southern Poverty Law Center added a new category into hate crimes that they were tracking: male supremacy.
Oh, well, good.
This includes assaults and attacks by men who, and this is like exactly what it said, who view women as genetically inferior, inherently treacherous, or unwilling to provide them with the sex and submission that they see as their birthright. The FBI actually, and I didn't know this, had began tracking hate crimes against women in 2013. And hate crimes against women, when they tracked all the hate crimes, starting in 2013 for that year, hate crimes against women accounted for 24% of all hate crimes.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Especially when there's so many different categories in hate crimes. Like 24% were just hate crimes against women, gender-based.
Well, but then those, I feel like, can have other levels too. Like, it might be also transgender, also like sexual orientation, also ethnicity, like on top of like the fact you hate women.
Oh yeah, it's so it is hard to track just for that. You're right. Scott Paul was definitely a man who hated women.
Oh yeah.
When he was in high school, he wrote a novel called Rejected Youth that was a revenge fantasy about a middle school boy whose hatred of girls, like his peers, grew after the character felt humiliated and shunned by his female peers. The main character was named Scott Bradley instead of Scott Paul.
Stop killing women.
Then the high school student murders the girls one by one before throwing himself off a rooftop as the cops close in on him. This is a novel he wrote in high school.
This is kind of what ended up happening, just not in such a revenge fantasy way.
He also openly showed admiration for Hitler and the Aryan nations. I saw some interviews with classmates. They literally referred to him as Nazi Scott. The classmates said he would just walk up to a group of them and just literally start talking about Hitler and how great he was.
If your nickname has Nazi in it, like, get out. Unless it's like Nazi killer. Can you say that? Like, unless it's the other way.
His campaign slogan when he ran for class president was "Vote Burelli," or however you say his last name. Vote Burelli, because we don't need no woman.
They let him do that? Well, I guess it was the 80s or whatever.
Yeah, if he was 40 in 2018.
Yeah, I hate to say that can be excused, but I guess it makes more sense than if it were now.
His violent writings did concern his family because he was so open about it. And I did read one of his sister-in-laws. I didn't look too much into his family because I don't really give a shit. But one of his sister-in-laws, he was living in D.C. at the time of the D.C. sniper. And she thought it was him. She actually contacted FBI and put his name in the hat and was like, this might be my brother-in-law.
Isn't it crazy how many cases are like that where they're like, yo, I legit thought it was this person. Then that person does do something crazy. Yeah. Like, your gut instincts are so important.
Yes. Yeah.
She wasn't wrong. It just wasn't that time.
Yeah. He was fired, arrested, banned from bars, schools, restaurants, like all for the way he treated women, but he never faced criminal charges. In 2008, he enlisted in the army, but was kicked out by 2010 for, quote, unaccepted conduct against female soldiers, which I'm coming from a military family, so I have a lot of respect, but also you gotta, like, we all know from the murder that just happened in Fort Hood. Yeah. You gotta kind of treat people really fucking bad to get kicked out of the army.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, how bad was it that he got kicked out? Because, like, women are very discriminated against or harassed or what have you in the army and in like military systems. Like, how bad was that?
Yeah. And not by everyone. I know there's a lot, it's just like the police thing. There's a lot of good military people, but we do know there is a trend of discrimination against women. Yeah. And he got kicked out. So, like, it was amazing.
Yeah.
They were like, fuck you.
I'm glad they kicked him out.
But that just made him write more stories about murdering and raping women. He taught at different schools, but was always fired after groping or harassing women. But somehow it was kind of like that case study with the doctor when he stole the identity. He kind of just was able to move to a different town and a different school.
Oh, God.
Then in 2016, he moved to Florida. He eventually began, this is crazy. They found all these searches. He Googled yoga all the time. Yoga porn, yoga classes, yoga studios. He was obsessed.
I don't want to say like a fetish is weird and I'll never like fetish discriminate, but I've never heard of yoga porn. So, okay.
Yeah. Investigators said he had planned the attack for months, if not like a year. The gun was purchased in July, so the attack was in November, so he just bought the gun a few months before. A few months before the killings, he also created a website that I couldn't find. Obviously, it's been taken down, but he created a website where he wrote, like on the website, he put his poems about killing, stalking, torturing, and raping women. And he actually, sorry. And you can tell, like, well, obviously he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. Like he thought he had the best ideas in the world. So he sent his link, like the link to his website, to a friend. And the friend's wife saw it and was literally sent the link to the FBI and reported his website. Because this website literally was like how he'd kill, stalk, rape, torture all these women.
Yeah, it's that fine line too of like when you have a stalker and there's nothing that can be done because they haven't actually done anything. Like, I don't know what laws would need to be in place, but like that needed taken care of then. And I don't know how to do that. You know that that's going to escalate. And it's the same with stalkers. Like, well, he hasn't actually broken into your house. That's when we're allowed to come. Mm-hmm. Like, no, there needs to be something that...
No, I agree.
I don't know, but I don't know what it is because I also don't want to like... There's that whole issue of like catching people and like prosecuting them for something they actually weren't going to do. Like there's that whole thing too.
Yeah.
So, oh God.
No, and you're right. It was sent to the FBI, but they determined it was a non-actionable case by FBI standards. Like that's exactly it. They were like, it's a website. Like, sure, unless he does something, it's a tricky subject.
I don't have a right answer.
So I saw a lot of things back and forth about whether this was a hate crime, but it is like seen as a hate crime and it's an example used for a hate crime, as it should be. The only good piece I can end on is that the Florida State Board of Trustees gave $30,000 of their own money to Joshua Quick for law school.
Oh,
so they
nice.
Came up with $30,000 and they all donated to help him finish law school.
Wow. That is a nice note to end on.
Yeah. But I saw this case and I was like, it's just stop killing women.
And also stop with the mass shootings. Like, I bet we didn't hear about it because I don't want to botch the statistic, but the statistics are like there are mass shootings all the time in the USA, like, or more than all the time. Like they happen weekly. I mean, they've gone down during quarantine because people aren't anywhere, but that's like not a great statistic.
This case was so recent. I had never heard of it. Like this is not a case I remember making national news.
Man, no. Well, because think about it. I don't want to sound like morbid, but there are so many mass shootings that they can't all make the national news now.
Yeah. This case, I just felt really like it really needed to be talked about because, like, to your point, the signs have to start meaning something. We have to do something about this whole, sure, they talk about raping women and like he clearly hates women and he loves Hitler, but like, has he done anything physically? We have to figure out what to do because not always, not always. Sometimes people fantasize about very dark things and they don't act on it, but there has to be something in place because this case could have been these murders could have been prevented,
especially when you have family members and close friends being like, this is bad enough, I'm taking it to the top.
They thought he was the DC sniper, like that. That's why I feel like we need to know about cases like this because something has got to be put in place to try to prevent this. I mean, that girl was 21.
Yeah.
We lost an amazing doctor. Three women lost their mom.
Well, and who knows what long-term damage happened to the survivors of the attempted murder.
And there wasn't a lot of information about that. And I imagine too you might not want information. Yeah. I try not to go digging if it's not
available.
Yeah, because they might not. But know. Some of them were shot in the back. I imagine they might be in wheelchairs. Like, it's awful.
Yeah. Did you know that I went to I may have told you this before, but maybe not our listeners, that I went to the college that had one of the worst school shootings in history. It's the Umpqua Community College.